Oh, there he goes.
Paul Freeman claimed he stumbled upon not one Bigfoot, but an entire population of the creature near Walla Walla. Rick Jacobs took a photo of a strange-looking large bipedal mammal in Utah, along with its offspring. While these two sightings were not clear as day, one was, and what the camera revealed changed everything. Provo Canyon, UTRA, 2012. In October 2012, a man posting as Beard Card was camping with his wife and 3 siblings near Squaw Peak and the Little Rock Canyon overlook. They spotted deer on a hillside and climbed toward them for a closer look. Partway up, they saw something dark in the brush and revised their guess: bear. That identification was reasonable. This is black bear country. Ursus americanus is dark, bulky, silent on leaf litter, and shows itself in exactly that ambiguous middle distance where the eye fills in whatever it expects. Then the shape rose onto 2 legs and looked at them, and 5 people ran to the car and left their tent on the mountain. Here is where animal knowledge earns its keep. A bear standing up is not a bear walking upright. Rearing is a sensory posture, not a locomotive one. When a black bear stands, it is buying altitude for its nose. Watch a reared bear, and you see the tell. The forelimbs hang slack, the wrists dangle, the weight sits back on the heels. The head sways in slow arcs while the nostrils flare. It is a periscope. It holds for seconds, then drops. Sustained upright travel is different, and rare enough that when it happens it makes the news. The bear that walked upright through New Jersey suburbs for years did so because his forepaws were damaged. Upright was the only comfortable gait left to him. An upright bear is often an injured bear. Somewhere behind that silhouette is an animal in pain. Jeffrey Meldrum, who has spent a career on primate locomotion, watched this footage and said there was not enough to draw a conclusion, that vegetation makes shape and movement easy to misread, and that it may simply have been a distracted bear. Others read the long arms as unmistakably primate. Nobody has moved anyone. Now the harder detail. That December, a separate hiker in the Utah hills near Provo Canyon filmed a figure on a slope that stood up and threw rocks at him, a behavior proponents treat as a signature. So a rock-throwing biped is one of exactly 2 things: a primate we have never catalogued, or a person the camera did not settle it. Cameras never do. Rick Jacobs, Allegheny National Forest, Pennsylvania, 2007. On 16 September 2007, a deer hunter named Rick Jacobs strapped a Bushnell trail camera to a tree in the Allegheny National Forest, scattered a scented deer attractant on the ground to pull an animal into frame, and walked away. When he pulled the card, he had bear cubs. 30 seconds apart, he also had something else: a dark, hunched, hairy figure with its face pressed into the dirt where the attractant lay, forelimbs disproportionately long, hind limbs folded beneath it at an angle that read wrong. The BFRO called it a juvenile Sasquatch and argued the limb ratios were closer to a chimpanzee than to any bear. The Pennsylvania Game Commission answered with 2 words I want to spend this segment on, because they are the most important 2 words in this entire film: sarcoptic mange. Their spokesman, Jerry Fieser, whose officers routinely trap and tag bears, was blunt. There was no question it is a bear with a severe case of mange. Mange is caused by Sarcoptes scabii, a burrowing mite that tunnels through the epidermis and lays eggs beneath the skin. The immune response is catastrophic. Hair falls out in sheets, skin thickens into grey, cracked, elephantine plates, hyperkeratosis, and the cracks weep and become infected. The itching is relentless, so the animal cannot rest, so it cannot forage, so it burns fat it does not have. Without pelage, it loses thermoregulation. In a Pennsylvania winter, that is a death sentence written in slow motion. It is a welfare case that nobody answered. Marble Mountain Wilderness, California, 2001. In June 2001, a youth leader named Jim Mills took a group called Campus Life into the Marble Mountain Wilderness in Northern California. Before anyone saw anything, they found a structure. Branches and small trees snapped rather than cut, woven into a crude domed shelter with claw marks on the surrounding trunks. Mills filmed it sounding uneasy rather than excited. Then somebody looked up at the ridge. What follows is the longest alleged Sasquatch footage in existence: a dark bipedal figure walking down a distant ridgeline, stopping, turning back toward the camp, and the campers claim jumping, screaming, shoving a tree. Investigators later flown to the site put the subject at roughly 8 feet. Mills sat on the tape. It surfaced around 2011 after his death. Duration is the whole story here, not the pixels. A still image is an accident. Minutes of continuous walking is a performance, and gait is the one thing a performance cannot fully counterfeit at length. Human walking is a stiff-legged, inverted pendulum system. We vault over an almost fully extended extended knee at mid-stance, strike with the heel, roll to the toe, and drop our center of mass in a shallow arc, storing and returning energy like a pogo. Astonishingly efficient and deeply weird among mammals. Bear locomotion is nothing like it. Plantigrade, pigeon-toed, rolling, the whole body oscillating side to side. What proponents claim to see in footage like this is a third thing. A compliant gait, knees bent throughout the stance, no full extension. A smooth, gliding transit with almost no vertical bounce. Arms swinging long and loose. The gait of an animal built for rough ground and for silence rather than for economy. If that gait is real, it is not a man in a suit, because a man cannot walk that way for minutes without his thighs failing. Try it. Walk a kilometer with your knees bent 40 degrees and never straighten them. If it is not real, the gait exists in the imagination of the people watching, and the footage is too degraded to say, "Wild things stay in the folds of the land." It is the first thing the mountain teaches you. Paul Freeman, Blue Mountains, 1994. A former U.S. Forest Service patrolman, Paul Freeman, claimed the thing more often and more loudly than almost anyone here. In 1982, he reported an 8-foot reddish-brown animal near Walla Walla. Roughly a decade later, the date is given variously as 1992 or 1994, the location straddling the Washington-Oregon line. He videotaped what he said were 2 adults and a juvenile after casting fresh tracks in the mud. A footprint is a pressure map. It records mass, balance, the sequence in which the foot loaded and unloaded, whether the toes gripped, whether the heel drove. I have read tracks in mud to determine whether a horse was lame and on which limb. A track will lie to a tourist and confess to a tracker. 2 features made Freeman's casts famous enough that Grover Krantz and Jeffrey Meldrum both spent years on them. The first is dermal ridges, the fine papillary lines that make up fingerprints and which also cover the soles of primate feet. Some of Freeman's cast appeared to carry them, a devastating detail if authentic, because it belongs to skin, not to plaster, not to plywood. The second is the mid-tarsal break. Your foot has a longitudinal arch and a stiff midfoot. It functions as a rigid lever, which is why you can sprint. An ape's foot has no such arch and flexes through the middle, which is why an ape can grip a branch with its foot, and why an ape's track shows a pressure ridge where the midfoot folded. A great many alleged Sasquatch tracks show exactly that flexion, but it is his other claim that dismantles the whole thing for me. He said he filmed a family, not an individual, a population. A large-bodied mammal population cannot persist on a handful of animals. It needs hundreds to thousands of breeding individuals to survive inbreeding depression, disease, and bad decades. That many animals must eat, defecate, shed hair, contract parasites, and above all, die. Every large mammal on this continent leaves a body. We find them on roadsides, in avalanche debris, in hunters' freezers. We have never once found a Sasquatch, not a skull, not a femur, not a tooth. That absence is not a rhetorical flourish, it is data. Patterson-Gimlin film, Bluff Creek, California, 1967. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin rode into Bluff Creek on 20 October 1967 and came out with 954 frames, under a minute of film that has not been resolved in 60 years. Almost nobody talks about the horses. Start with the horses. The animals reacted before the men saw anything. Patterson's horse went over, and he went with it, and he came up holding the camera. That detail is not decoration. Horses are obligate prey animals with a flight response wired directly to the olfactory system, and they discriminate predator scent with brutal reliability. Put a bear or mountain lion scat downwind of a string of horses, and you will watch the line come apart. Heads up, nostrils flared, feet dancing, then gone. Horses do not spook at costumes. They spook at chemistry. Something out there smelled wrong to an animal whose life depends on smelling correctly. Then the film, a dark, hair-covered figure walking away across a sandbar, turning at the waist to look back, the famous frame, and departing without hurry. As an anatomist, my inventory, the gait is compliant, bent knees through stance, no heel and toe vault, a low bouncing stride. The arms are long, with a brachial index outside the human range. The hands swing near the knees. The shoulders are broad relative to the hips in a way that exceeds ordinary human proportion, which is why replicating the silhouette requires padding. Beneath the hair, the flanks and thighs appear to show muscle deformation, bunching and release in step with the loading of each limb. And in one much argued frame, the foot appears to flex through the midfoot rather than rolling stiffly over an arch. Against that, the case for a hoax is strong and specific. Bob Hieronymus stated that he wore the suit. The costume maker Philip Morris stated he sold Patterson the suit and coached him on lengthening the arms and broadening the shoulders. One anatomical detail cuts both ways, and I will give it to you straight, because a script normally hides this. The figure is female. Its breasts are covered in hair. In every primate that nurses, the mammary region tends towards sparse hair, for the obvious reason that an infant must find and latch onto a nipple. Hair-covered breasts are biologically odd, which means one of two things. Either this is an animal whose reproductive biology we have not begun to understand, or somebody in 1967 built a suit and did not think about nursing. William Rowe, Mica Mountain, British Columbia, 1955. This is the account I would put in front of a zoologist first, and not because of size or fear. William Rowe was a highway worker near Tête Jaune Cache who climbed Mica Mountain in October 1955 on a day off. He came out of low brush into a clearing and saw 75 yards away what he took for a grizzly. He had shot a grizzly near that spot the year before. He sat on a rock with his rifle and watched. Then it rose, stepped into the open, and it was not a bear. What he swore to 2 years later before the city solicitor in Edmonton reads like a field notebook. 6 feet, nearly 3 feet across, perhaps 300 pounds. Dark brown hair, silver-tipped, nowhere longer than an inch. Female by its breasts. Arms thicker than a man's and longer, reaching nearly to the knees. Feet broad at the front, tapering to thin heels. Small black eyes like a bear's. A neck shorter and thicker than any he had seen. And when it walked, it put its heel down first. It came within 20 feet, squatted on its haunches, pulled branches to its face, and stripped the leaves with its teeth. He was close enough to see the teeth were white and even. Everything valuable there is in one clause. She was feeding. Cryptid reports are almost always about a confrontation. This is a large mammal doing the boring 90% of its life thing, browsing. And browsing is testable in a way that terror is not. Consider the arithmetic. A 300-pound folivore has entered one of the least forgiving nutritional contracts in mammalian biology. Leaves are cellulose, and cellulose requires fermentation, an enormous gut, a long retention time, a metabolic rate low enough to wait. A mountain gorilla eats 18 to 30 kilograms of vegetation a day. A folivore of this size in a forest with a hard winter would scar the landscape simply by eating. And then it defecates. Scat is the honest witness. It carries diet, parasites, hormone metabolites, and DNA. Every large mammal population on Earth is legible through its droppings. Rowe understood this instinctively. After the animal left, he found its droppings in 5 separate places, examined them for hair and insect shells, found none, and concluded that it was strictly a vegetarian. He looked at it, he described it, and he left it lying on the mountain. That is this entire subject in one sentence. A careful man stood over the evidence that could have ended the argument forever, and did not carry it home. He also described her hair as dark brown, silver-tipped. Word for word, that is the definition of a grizzly. I do not think William Rowe lied. He saw something, recorded it, swore to it under oath. I also think a man who has never watched a grizzly sit back on its haunches and pull leaves through its lips has no idea how human that animal looks. The Chapman family, Ruby Creek, British Columbia, 1941. Mid-afternoon, September 1941, at Ruby Creek, 30 miles up the Fraser River from Agassiz. Jeannie Chapman's eldest boy told her a cow was coming out of the woods. She went out. She saw what she took for a very large bear moving in the bushes past the railway tracks. She called the children to her, and then the thing stepped onto the tracks, and she saw that it was a gigantic man covered with hair, not fur, roughly 7.5 feet, hair about 4 inches long, pale yellow-brown, thick through the chest, long-armed, with no neck to speak of. She took the children and ran. It entered the house behind them and broke into their stored fish. Her husband George came home to enormous footprints and hair snagged high on the building. And then, by the family's account, it came back, night after night, for about a week. 2 details make me sit up, and neither is the size. The first is the neck. Nearly every witness in this record describes the absence of one. That is not a monster movie flourish. It is a real anatomical configuration. In animals that carry heavy skulls with large jaw muscles and a pronounced sagittal crest, the nuchal musculature and trapezius mass rise into a hump that swallows the cervical spine. Gorillas have it. Bison have it. A grizzly's shoulder hump is precisely this, a muscle block over the scapula, built for digging. No neck is what a mammal looks like when the head is anchored rather than balanced. The second detail is the one I would build an entire investigation around. It returned. Food conditioning is the most reliable behavioral law in wildlife biology. An animal that finds a caloric reward at a human structure will come back. And it will come back on a schedule, and the interval will shorten, and its fear will decay with every unpunished visit. This is why a fed bear is a dead bear. It is not a proverb. It is a prediction with a mortality rate attached. A creature that scatters a family's fish and then revisits nightly for a week is behaving exactly as a habituated omnivore behaves. It is the single most biologically coherent behavior in this entire list. And then there is the hair on the wall. We snag hair on purpose now. Modern grizzly surveys run barbed wire around scent lures, wait, and collect the follicles left behind. From those follicles come individual genotypes, relatedness, population estimates. Hair caught at 7 feet on a homestead wall wall in 1941 is potentially an entire animal. It was not preserved. It never is. Every hair sample submitted in the modern era for genetic testing has come back the same way. Bear, bison, cow, horse, raccoon, human, never something new. Muchalat, Harry, Kanuma River, British Columbia, 1928. He was a Nootka trapper, and by the account of the missionary father Anthony Terhar, an unusually fearless one, a man who worked the deep forest alone when others would not. In the autumn of 1928, he cached his canoe at the mouth of the Kanuma River, walked 12 miles upstream, and built a lean-to. One night, wrapped in blankets and wearing only his woolen underwear, he was picked up bodily and carried into the hills. At daylight, he found himself under a rock shelf, surrounded by roughly 20 of them. Males in front, females behind, young at the back. They stared, some touched him, then pulled gently at his underwear, which they took for loose skin. Around him, bones. When the group went out to forage, he ran. 12 miles to the canoe, 45 miles of open water to Nootka. The village woke to his cries and found him barefoot, soaked, half dead. It took 3 weeks to nurse him back. He never went into the woods again, never even returned for his rifle or his trapline, which in 1928 was most of what a man owned. The story collapses in one place and holds in another. 20 animals is a troop that implies mothers, infants, weaning, and the deafening racket of any primate group on Earth. It implies a home range, and a home range implies feeding sign, worn trails, day nests, refuse. The bones imply a site. Scattered bone means a place used repeatedly. Den sites and middens are, in wildlife biology, embarrassingly easy to find. We locate wolf rendezvous sites by the bone litter, bear dens by scat and matted vegetation. A 20-animal encampment in coastal British Columbia is not a needle in a haystack. It is a village. Nobody ever found it. Byrne walked the Kanuma decades later and found nothing at all. The story fails structurally, and yet one detail is medically real, and it stops me filing this man under invention. Over those 3 weeks of convalescence, Father Anthony watched Muchalat Harry's hair turn white. Medicine knows this as canetes subita, whitening over a short period following extreme stress. The mechanism is not pigment draining from the shaft, which is chemically impossible. It appears to be an acute autoimmune event, a diffuse alopecia areata, in which the immune system preferentially sheds pigmented hairs, leaving the unpigmented ones standing. The person does not go white. The person goes bald of everything except the white. 3 weeks is precisely the timescale that mechanism predicts. I'm not telling you a Sasquatch caused it. I am telling you that whatever happened on the Kanuma was severe enough to leave a signature on his body, that modern medicine recognizes the signature, and that men who invent stories for attention do not abandon their rifle, their traps, and their livelihood and refuse the forest until they die. Trauma is not evidence of a monster, but it is evidence of something. Albert Ostman, Toba Inlet, British Columbia, 1924. And so to the oldest and strangest account of them all. Albert Ostman was a Swedish-born prospector who said that in 1924, at Toba Inlet, he was carried off in the night inside his sleeping bag and held for roughly 6 days by a family of 4. He put the adult male at 8 feet and 800 pounds. He described the female foraging, returning with armfuls of grass, twigs, spruce, hemlock, ground nuts. He described curiosity rather than aggression. He escaped, he said, by getting the male to swallow the contents of his snuff tin. He told nobody until 1957, when a magistrate cross-examined him at length and could not break the story. 3 things there are worth a clinician's time. The snuff. Ostman's escape hinges on real pharmacology. Nicotine is a potent nicotinic acetylcholine receptor agonist, and in a naive animal, a sudden oral bolus produces salivation, violent emesis, tachycardia, tremor, ataxia, and at sufficient dose, seizures. A tin of snuff would incapacitate a large mammal. It would incapacitate you. That his escape is toxicologically sound is either the most quietly persuasive detail in this film, or the cleverest invention in it, the carry. He estimated he had been taken 25 miles over rough coastal terrain in about 3 hours, inside a bag. Better than 8 miles an hour, in the dark, over deadfall, carrying a 200-pound load. Not merely superhuman, at the outer edge of what mass and metabolism permit in any terrestrial mammal, the family. And here the story quietly betrays itself. An adult male, an adult female, a young female. A nuclear family. That structure describes no great ape. Gorillas live in harems built around a silverback. Chimpanzees live in fluid multi-male communities. Orangutans are near solitary. The mother-father-son-daughter household is not primate biology. It is a 1920s human household with hair on it. The primatologist John Napier rejected the account on the plainest grounds. The food supply could not have supported them. The skeptic Joe Nickell called it the result of imagination than of recollection. Both are the same objection. An ecologist looking at a valley and asking asking what is on the menu. Here is where I leave you. If Sasquatch exists, it is an unstudied, unprotected, unmanaged great ape with no legal status and no conservation plan, and we are failing it. And if it does not exist, then the animal in the trail camera photograph is a black bear whose skin is coming apart from mites, standing hunched because its feet hurt too much to walk. One of those two animals is out there tonight. Only one of them needs a monster to be worth saving. 10 encounters, a century apart. A description that barely moves. The height, the hair, the arm length, the odor, the compliant gait, the vanished neck. From hunters, trappers, forestry workers, children, and men who swore affidavits and gained nothing by it. Against that, an absence so total it screams. No bones, no scat, no genome, no carcass on a logging road. I do not think they lied. I think they saw an animal, in poor light, at a bad angle, moving in a way that terrified them, and the human brain, built to find faces and bodies in noise, handed them a person. Consistency is the strongest argument for Bigfoot, and it is not evidence. It is also what you get when every nervous system on Earth runs the same software, in the same dark, on the same bad information. We have never held the animal. Until someone does, what these humans have seen remains exactly that. Something seen, not something known.